Anyway, welcome to this week's Parsha, Parsha Beshalach, which is going to, at the beginning, highlight Kriyas Yamsuf, but we're not going to go through that. And but the seventh Aliyah, which is now that the Jewish people have left Mitzrayim, they're already on that trek, traveling towards Mount Sinai. They've gone through the Yamsuf. Kriyas Yamsuf is the splitting of the Red Sea. And they arrive at this location by the name of, they come to this location by the name of Midbar Sin, which is the Sin Desert. It's not the Sinai Desert. It sounds like the Sinai Desert, but it's not the Sinai Desert. It's called the Sin Desert. At least I don't think it's the Sinai Desert. It says Sin, Midbar Sin, the Sin Desert. And this is chapter 17 of Parshas Beshalach. So they travel from Midbar Sin according to their travels, and then they come to this location called Refidim. Refidim is the name of the location. And the Torah describes how Ein Mayim Lishtos Ha'am, there was no water. And this is the first major time when the Jewish people were without water. And this is one of the major episodes of the complainings of the Jewish people in the desert. So there was no water to drink. And the pasuk says, Yorav Ha'am in Moshe. The people contended with Moshe and they said, give us water to drink. And he said to them, Moshe said to them, why are you contending with me? Why are you testing Hashem in this process? Vayitz b'sham ha'am l'mayim. The people became very thirsty for water. V'yolin ha'am al Moshe, and then they started complaining. So the contention then turned into complaints against Moshe. V'yoma, and then Moshe said, Lama zeh lisanu. The people said, why did you take us out of Mitzrayim? Why have you taken us out of Mitzrayim to cause us to die here in the desert? Our children, our cattle, to die in thirst. V'yitzak Moshe al Hashem, and then Moshe called out to Hashem, saying, Ma esel la'am hazeh, what am I going to do with this people? What am I going to do with this complaining nation? Od ma'at esakaluni. A little bit of time, they're going to kill me, they're going to stone me to death. What am I going to do? V'yoma Hashem al Moshe, so Hashem said to Moshe, Avor lifnei ha'am, pass before the people, walk before the people, V'kachitecha meziknei Yisrael, and take with you of the elders of Israel. It's interesting, it doesn't say to take all the elders of Israel. The pasuk says that he's telling him to take some of the elders of Israel, just some of the elders. I'm not sure the significance why not all the elders, but some of the elders. Umatacha asher kisabo esa yu'or, and the staff with which you struck the river, or you had Aaron strike the river with the plague of the blood on the river, the staff which you've used up until this point, kach b'yodacha, take that in your hand, v'holachta, and then go. I'm going to tell you where to go. Hin yomid lefanecha, behold, I'll be standing, or I'm standing before you, Sham, over there. So Hashem says to Moshe, I'm going to be standing over there. Alatzur, upon the rock, b'chorev, in Chorev. Now Chorev is another word for Sinai. So Mount Sinai was in this location called Chorev. So Chorev and Sinai are two words describing the same location. So Hashem says to Moshe, he says, go, and I'll be standing upon a rock in Chorev, which is not where they are right now, because I said before they're in Refidim, this location called Refidim, which is not the same location as Chorev. So Hashem says to Moshe, go off, and I'll be standing upon a rock in Chorev, the Hakisa B'tzor, and then you have to take the stick and then strike the rock, for Yotzim Menumayim, and the water's going to come out of that rock, V'shasa Ha'am, and the people will drink the water. V'yaskein Moshe, and Moshe did exactly what Hashem said, L'einei Ziknei Yisrael, before the eyes of the elders who were standing with him, those elders who went with them, he did that. Now it's interesting that this location where the water came from, as I said, was from in Chorev. The Ramban says, and it was surprising to me, I hadn't really thought about this before, but the Ramban says, Nachmanides explains that, this was about 2.5 miles away, approximates to about 2.5 miles away from where the camp was. So Moshe is told by Hashem to go 2.5 miles to Chorev, Sinai, and the Ramban says that this rock, which he's referring to over here, the pasuk's referring to, is either the actual rock of Sinai itself, where the bush was, where Hashem appeared to Moshe, or it was a location near the Mount Sinai, but either way, it was 2.5 miles away. It was in that region, and that's where the water was going to come from. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating that he told him to go 2.5 miles. They're very thirsty as it is, and now he's telling him walk 2.5 miles to this location where the water's going to come from. And the Ramban says that this rock where the water came from is the same rock which traveled with the Jewish people through the desert. It's the same rock which happened later on in the book of Numbers, when again there's a lack of water, and Hashem tells Moshe to hit the rock there, and that's where the mistake happens of Moshe hitting at that episode later on. We'll learn about it eventually. That episode, it was wrong for Moshe to hit the rock. He wasn't supposed to hit the rock at that later episode. Only supposed to speak to the rock. We'll cover that when we get to it. Maybe, if it's in the 7th Leah, I'm not sure. But in this episode over here, Hashem's telling him explicitly, strike the rock over here. But it's the same rock. It's the same rock, which also is the rock called Be'er Miriam, the well of Miriam, the rock or the well of Miriam, which traveled with the Jewish people as they traveled through the desert. This is the source of water throughout the entire 40-year journey through the desert. And this is the first encounter with it. And it's again interesting that it's 2.5 miles away from the camp. It didn't appear right there with the Jewish people when they complained for the water. He had to walk 2.5 miles to get to it. But he goes to it, and then he hits the rock according to the instruction of Hashem at this juncture. And then gushes of water, rivers of water, the Ramban says, rivers of water came flowing out of this rock and flowed to the camp, so they had water. And that's where they got the water from. But because this appearance of water came in the wake of their complaints, so the passage ends by saying, Vayikra Shema Mokka Masa Meriva. Moshe gave a name to this location of Masa Meriva, testing and contending, because the Jewish people tested and contended with Hashem. Because they said, Hayesh Hashem birkebeinu im oyin. Is Hashem in our midst? Is he not in our midst? Because they were questioning, they were complaining, where's Hashem? So because they complained and they questioned Hashem's presence in their midst, so that's why Moshe calls the location Masa Umariva. The word Masa means to test, and Mariva means to contend. And that's how the place has been named ever since then. I don't know if we know where the location is, but anyway, that's what it's called, Masa Mariva, because of the complaints and the contending with Hashem about the water. Even though they got the water, then that's paragraph number 1. Paragraph number 2, V'yava Amalek, then Amalek came. Now, who's Amalek? I mentioned before, Amalek is a descendant of Esau. And Amalek represents for us the symbol, is the representation of Haman. He's the ancestor of Haman. He's the representation of anti-Semitism, of Nazi Germany, and the like throughout history. And Amalek throughout Jewish history is always popping up and fighting and contending with the Jewish people, fighting with the Jewish people to undermine them. And this is the first appearance of Amalek. And right away, this is also the very first war and battle that the Jewish people engaged in since they left Mitzrayim. So Amalek comes along, v'yilachem im Yisrael b'Refidim, and they also battle with the Jewish people in this location, Refidim. V'yom Moshe, and Moshe said, Al Yoshua, to Joshua, B'chol lanu anoshim v'tzei yilachem b'Amalek. He says, he says to Joshua, go out and choose soldiers and people to fight in this war, because they're fighting with us. We have to now engage in this battle with Amalek. And this battle then ensues. Now, before I continue, the question is, nothing is by accident. Obviously, we understand nothing's by accident. And juxtapositions of passages in the Torah are also very significant. And whenever we see, odd juxtapositions, it behooves us to ask the question, why does the Torah place this after this? And this is very frequently asked question later on in the later portions when we get into the mitzvahs of the Torah, and sometimes some completely unrelated mitzvahs are juxtaposed to other mitzvahs. We're always trying to figure out why is the Torah placing them next to each other. But here the question is there any significance over here between the juxtaposition of this passage of the war with Amalek and the previous passage? There is a juxtaposition. The Medrash says, and Rashi quotes the Medrash. Rashi explains, Samach Parsha Zu L'Mikrazeh, the Torah juxtaposes this episode with Amalek right after the episode of the water, Lemor, Lomar, Tomid, Ani, Benechem, to say, as a reminder to the Jewish people, that I'm always among you. I'm always there with you. I'm always there with you, Hashem says. I'm always there with you, ready to take care of your needs. V'atem ha'omrim, and you're saying, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu imoyen, and you're asking, is Hashem among us or not? Because that was the last verse right before this. You're asking, is Hashem with us or is He not with us? I'm always there with you. And I'll prove it to you, Chayecha, by your lives, Sha'akele ba v'noshech esachem, because I'm going to do something over here which may not seem so comfortable initially, but it's for a purpose. By your life, a dog is going to come and is going to bite you. And you're going to cry out to me, and you're going to realize where I am. Unfortunately, sometimes people have to be woken up to realize that Hashem is there. The endless bounty and blessings that Hashem gives to us really should be enough to recognize that Hashem is always with us. And there's no end to the blessings and the goodness that we have in our lives. We're so focused on the negative, what we don't have, we lose sight of what we do have. And tragically, sadly, sometimes people need to be woken up before they realize that Hashem is there, or in order to see that Hashem is there. And this is what was happening. So Hashem says, by your lives, you're going to recognize that I'm here with you. You're asking me, am I with you or not? Is Hashem with us or not? Of course I'm with you. I give you everything. But if you're not realizing it, you're not waking up, I'm going to have to wake you up. We don't want to hear that. But that's what happens sometimes. And then Rashi goes on, the Medrash goes on, Mashal la'adam. The parable is told of a person, Shehirkiv beno al kasefo, v'yotze l'derech, of a person that carries his son upon his shoulders. And he goes off traveling, goes walking down the road. Hayosa ben roa chayfetz. So the son sees an object, he sees a car, he sees a candy, he sees whatever, he sees different items along the way. Voman, he says to his father, Abba, Tol chayfetz zavatan, give me that over there, give me that car, give me that house, give me that good meal, give me that and give me that. And who knows him? Hashem gives to him, or the father gives to him. He's very kind, he's very benevolent, so he gives him everything he asks for. V'chein shniya, v'chein shlishis, and this goes on. And then pagu b'adam echad, and then one day they meet an individual on the road, and then Amalo Osaben, the son says to this person, he says, Abba, have you seen my father anywhere? Have you seen my father anywhere? The son says to this person on the road. Of course, the father's been carrying him the entire time, and the son is saying, have you seen my father anywhere? So Amalo Aviv, so the father is astonished and very disturbed by this. You don't know where I am? I've been carrying you for all these years till now. You're on my shoulders. I'm carrying you. Hashlichum alav, and then he throws him off of his shoulders. Uba kelev, a dog comes, v'nashcha bites him, and then the son realizes, and then obviously the father then protects the child, takes care of him, and then the son realizes he's really there. But it's a very visual image of what goes on in our own lives, right? That sometimes we forget. Oftentimes we forget. We forget about all the goodness that Hashem bestows. And how often do we hear the question? I mean, I'm not going to say I'm tired of hearing it, but I hear it so much. The question of why bad things happen to good people. The question is never why do good things happen to good people, or why do good things happen? Good things, a lot of good things happen. Yes, there are questions why bad things happen to good people, why good things happen to bad people. That's a question. It's true. Maybe we'll talk about that later on a little bit. But the endless bounty of kindness that people experience in their lives, we can breathe, real Baruch Hashem. We're all sitting here. We can see, we can breathe, we can talk, we can think, we can hear, we can feel, we can remember, we can think, we look around us, all of the books and the light. I mean, it's endless. We just came from davening. Hopefully, we just said a whole series of brachas, all the blessings. Pekei Achirim, we mentioned this last week, all of the endless bounty of blessings which we experience constantly. The body's working, all the different aspects of the body, the functioning of the body. It's endless, it's infinite. So, we forget that, and then it's like, where's Hashem? Where's Hashem? Is Hashem anywhere? I don't see God anywhere. The son says, where's my father? And the father's carrying the child. So he takes him off his shoulders, and then he wakes him up a little bit. But this is the juxtaposition. This is why the Jewish people, having just been complaining about the lack of water, so then Hashem sends them this message and wakes them up a little bit. Now, it's understandable. It is, on the one hand, you could ask, the Jewish people, they've gone through all the miracles of Mitzrayim. They've gone through the 10 plagues. The sea is split before them. The manna has already fallen from heaven at this point in the story. I didn't go through that in this week's portion also. So it is a little bit kind of funny that they should be questioning, is Hashem among them or not? It's one thing for a person who's typically oblivious to God to question, is God with me or not? But for the Jewish people who have been seeing so many miracles, for them to ask the question, is Hashem with us or not with us? It is a bit of a funny question. You could answer, maybe the answer is because people forget very easily. We easily forget. As I just said before, we easily forget. But it is it's a funny thing that they should ask that question. But I'll come back to it. I'll answer that. I want to give a little bit more of a deeper understanding of this. But before I do that, let me zero in on one detail. It's a big detail in this battle with Amalek. Because as the Torah describes further about how this battle ensued, it's very interesting because the verse says in verse 11 that the soldiers, whoever were fighting against Amalek, so the way that the battle took place was in verse 11, V'hoya ka'asher Moshe yado, that when Moshe raised his hands, V'gava Yisrael, that's when the Jewish people vanquished Amalek. So he raised his hands, and then the Jewish people were winning the battle. But Kasher Yoniach Yado, when Moshe lowered his hands, Gava Amalek, that's when Amalek began to win. So it's like a seesaw dynamic. When Moshe lifted his hands up, then the Jewish people were winning. When he lowered his hands, that's when Amalek was winning. So almost looks magical, like mystical and spiritual and magical. So what was really going on was the following: the Mishnah in Tractate Rosh Hashanah. So the Mishnah, before the Mishnah explains this, the Mishnah describes a halachic question regarding two people or somebody that was walking behind a shul on Rosh Hashanah, or that he was inside of his house near a shul, and this individual hears the sound of a shofar being blown inside the shul, but he's just walking by. So the Mishnah says that if he focused his heart upon the sound of the shofar, if he concentrated, then he's fulfilled his obligation. He fulfilled the mitzvah of hearing the shofar. But if he doesn't focus his mind, then even though he's hearing the sound of the shofar, he doesn't fulfill his obligation. Because, the key is to focus and to be paying attention to what the sound of the shofar is. Understand it's for the sake of the mitzvah, and only then do you fulfill your mitzvah. That's part one. And then the Mishnah goes on, as an illustration of the similar idea, explains this passage which I just read. And it was when Moshe lifted his hands up to the heavens. So the Mishnah said, V'kiyadu shel Moshe oses milchama. Does it make sense that the hands of Moshe were making the war? Or making the war fail or not fail? How can that be? And lo melacha, rather to tell you, because kol shemans Yisrael mistaklim klapi mala, when the Jewish people looked heavenward, umashabdim es libim la'avim shebeshamayim, and they subjugated their hearts to their Father in heaven, that's what made them win. It wasn't a magical formula that when Moshe lifted his hands up, they won. But what that did, it stimulated the Jewish people to look heavenward when his hands were raised up. So everybody started a lot of people started looking up, seeing his hands, and then were looking at the heavens, and then subjugating their heart to Hashem in heaven, and that's what stimulated them to win the war. It's an amazing idea that inside their own thoughts, inside their own hearts, that's what's causing the battle to win. They're not doing anything militarily. They're not involved in a better strategy of fighting, but just simply the thoughts in the mind and the hearts, the feelings in the heart of the Jewish people, subjugating their hearts to Hashem. That's what made them win the battle. So that's how it happened. That's what happened. So it was a spiritual relationship between the spiritual elevation of the people, then Amalek was defeated. But if you look carefully, I want to zero in, I want to zoom closer into the exact words over here, because there's something very, very powerful and so practical and so relevant to our lives in these few words over here in the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah says that they would look heavenward and then subjugate their hearts. Now, what is this looking heavenward? Now, it wasn't just merely like staring blankly at the sky. The word histaklos, the Hebrew word histaklos, is not merely to glance, but rather to pay attention with thought, to think, to pay attention. Machshava, thought. That's what mistakla means. They looked at the heavens, and they saw and they thought. And the thinking led them to realize God is there, God is controlling the world, God is running this universe. Thinking. That's step one. But then the Mishnah says, plus, mishtabdim es libam lavim shemayim. They subjugated their hearts to their Father in heaven. 2 steps. One step is thinking. Next step is subjugating the heart. Thinking and feeling. Thinking and feeling. Thinking and plugging the emotions in. Because thinking alone, using the mind alone is not enough. They had to think, they had to pay attention, they had to look at it, but that wouldn't have been enough. Well, that would not have been enough. They had to also subjugate and subdue and submit their hearts to their Father in heaven. At that point, that's what triggered the victory of the war. So one of my favorite svarim over here, Revolbi, goes to town on this idea, talking about what kavanas halei, what kavana really means in davening and prayer, in learning, in Judaism in general. Because there are 2 powerful aspects of the human experience, and they are thinking, using the mind, and then using the heart, and having what's called the ratzon. Ratzon is the will, the desire, the emotional connection, the ratzon. For a person to only use mind without emotion, without desire, to get lost in the mind, to get lost in the theory, to get lost in the academics, is just not effective. It's like a body without a soul. And a person needs to combine with their thinking, with their concentrated thinking and their focus, an emotional component, a heartfelt component, a ratzon, a desire for whatever the thing is, particularly when it comes to serving Hashem. As in the case over here, it wasn't enough just to look and to think about, yeah, God is there, to subjugate the heart, to connect the emotions, to subjugate themselves to Hashem, to accept that presence of Hashem in their life. It's an emotional dimension. And that combination is the only key to the success in this war. But he says the same thing with all of our, in particular, he says with davening, he discusses a lot about prayer. And, I think you've seen me before do these different demonstrations of how people pray. It's hard to do it over Zoom, but when I'm doing it when I've done visual demonstrations in the shul in Elkins Park, there's the davener he's standing there like this. If you can see me, he's got this, and that's one form. That's like complete brainless davening, emotionless and brainless davening, right? But then there's the other kind of davening, which is much more of a focused davening, and it looks like they're reading a book. And God forbid, what? I've got to be careful over here. Halavai, we should all be standing with the siddur and shul. How many Jews are not praying at all, right? So at least we should have a siddur on our hand, even if we're doing the first form of davening, because at least if you're on the first level, there's a chance to get to the next level, the next level, next level. But the second level davening is when a person is praying, it's more like an academic exercise. They're just reading the book. They're reading the siddur. And they could be thinking intellectually and deeply about the words in the siddur, but it's with the mind only. It's with your mind only. The ideal form of davening is now to put the heart into it, to feel it, to use the siddur as a roadmap, as a inspiration to be able to connect to Hashem, to plug in the ratzon, the desire, the emotional desire. That's what so we've got to be careful with davening. Sometimes the sometimes classes and studies about prayer can, lead us away from the real purpose of prayer. It's not about the academic understanding of the words of prayer, but it's about connecting the heart through prayer. So this is what I was this morning going through this. I was very, very inspired by these several pages I was reading, and that's what the Jewish people experience, or those who did in this battle with Amalek, and that was the antidote to their question of is Hashem among us or not, because when they were engaged in this process of not just thinking about Hashem in their heavens, but also connecting their hearts to that experience as well, that's what caused them to win the battle. So the same author over here, Volbe, he says that perhaps is a little bit of a deeper understanding of their question, or it's a little bit of a deeper understanding to the response to their question of is God among us or not. When they said, is Hashem among us or not? So the simple meaning of that is Hashem with us? Is he there with us or not? So I want to take this slowly because I want to explain this. It's a deep idea in that expression, which takes it to a different level. The expression of is Hashem with us or not? Is Hashem with us or not? Now, it's best appreciated by looking at the Hebrew. So I'm going to do this very slowly. In Hebrew, it says, Ha'im yesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im ayin. Now let's zero in on the word yesh. The word yesh means there is. But conceptually, the word yesh means presence. Presence. Like presence means a felt presence of something. There is something there. That's that. Ayin means nothing. And that's another way of saying concealed presence. So another way to read this verse, or way to read that question is, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu? Is Hashem with us in a revealed, cognitive, and perceived fashion? Is he there with us in a very real, perceived way? Hayesh Hashem? What's the nature of God's conduct inside the world? Is he always felt? Is he always seen? Or ayin? Is he not always seen? Is he concealed? What's the nature of how God presents himself in the universe? Is he seen? Is he not seen? Is he revealed? Is he not revealed? Exactly what's going on in how is Hashem running this world? Is he running this world in a revealed way, or is he running this world in a concealed way? What is the philosophical understanding of Hashem's presence in this world? It's a deeper way to appreciate the question, but it's a way that when we think about ourselves, we often ask that question ourselves. Exactly how is Hashem running the world? Why do things happen this way? And why sometimes does Hashem reveal himself and Hashem doesn't reveal himself? And how come I don't always see Hashem? And how come, why do good things happen to bad people? And why bad things happen to good people? What's going on? Why? What is going on? What's the mechanism of what's going on? How is this happening? What's going on? And you see what happens? Like, when you get into that into that mindset, you get lost in your mind. You get lost in the thinking. We become lost in this philosophical inquiry about God, exactly who God is. Is he yesh or is he ayin? Is he there? Is he not there? I don't always see him. And we spend hours, we spend days, and we spend years thinking and pontificating, lost in our minds, and forgetting we're standing on Hashem's shoulders. Hashem's giving us everything. It's true we don't see it in a revealed way where it's kind of like all of a sudden like the sky opens up and all of a sudden miracles happen all around us. But we're just surrounded by so many blessings and such a bounty of experience. We're standing on Hashem's shoulders and we're thinking and pontificating exactly how Hashem is. What is Hashem? Who is Hashem? Why? What's going on? I don't get it. I don't understand. Why? I'm not saying these questions are important. They are important. They have their place. But when those questions disturb us from the connection, from just living a life of being with Hashem, and could disturb us from the relationship with Hashem, that's like the kid on the shoulders of his father. He's getting everything. He's being fed everything in his life. and he's thinking about, where's my father? Well, who is my father? Where did he come from? Etc., etc. He's forgetting the fact that he's being carried by his own father. And that question is, yes, is God with us or not with us? It's not just a question of, is he providing for us? It's a question of, it's this getting lost in the thought, getting lost in the philosophy. And, I teach philosophy. I give classes about philosophy too. But we've got to put it all in the right place, because at the end of the day, it's not about the philosophy. It's about the performance. It's about the feelings. It's about the actions. It's about our behavior. It's about our lives. That's what it's about. So that's the juxtaposition. And that's why these two passages next to each other, they're pontificating, they're philosophizing about who God is, what God is. And Hashem says, that's not what it's about. You've got to connect to me. And therefore he brings Amalek to force them to connect to him. And when they connect, that's when they win. Now, I want to go back. I had a question. All week long, I've been bothered. I get stuck, when I've got I get stuck on things that last Shabbos even, right? I get stuck on, so I've been stuck all week long on this thing about the fact that why did Hashem make the water come the way he did? And there was, they've just gone through all those miracles, splitting of the sea, 10 plagues, and now, they're thirsty for water. Why? So Hashem could have easily have brought a big cloud like he did with the hail. He could have just changed the weather. All of a sudden, the rain could have come pouring down upon the whole camp right away in an instant. He could have done that. But instead, he tells Moshe to go 2.5 miles. The Ramban says, I mentioned before, the Nachmanides says that the rock opened up like a river flowing with water. Then the river flowed to the camp. That's one opinion. He says that another opinion is that the Jewish people sent scouts or sent messengers with cattle out to that location to bring the water back. So can you imagine the days it took? He had to walk 2.5 miles to get the water in the first place, and then to come bring it all back. And even if it opened up into rivers and the rivers came flowing down, it took time. So why did Hashem make the water come right away? What is all this business of this long distance journey to get the water? Now, true that he went to Sinai, and I was trying to figure out a connection because water is a parable for Torah, and therefore the Torah comes from Sinai, therefore the water comes from Sinai. I was playing around with that, but it didn't seem to really, I didn't see anyone else talk about or expand upon that. But still, they're thirsty. So I bothered all week. Now, there's a Gemara which says a very interesting thing. The Gemara says that Avraham Avinu, it says Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav said that Kol Mash Osa Avram L'Malach Eshaz, whatever the Abraham did, however, how he conducted himself with the angels that came to visit him, that's how Hashem mirrored his conduct with the Jewish people later on. Because we know that everything which happened to the patriarchs is a portent, sets into motion what happened to the Jewish people in the future. So what Abraham himself did, how he conducted himself with those angels, so Hashem mirrored that conduct with the Jewish people. So whatever Abraham did directly with his own hands, so Hashem did directly with his own hands. So he provided food for them with his own hands. He provided the food for them. So Hashem provided directly food for the Jewish people with his own hands by making manna fall from heaven. Because Abraham stood underneath the tree by the guest directly himself, so Hashem also stood, actually referring to this verse over here, Hashem stood on the rock before Moshe directly. So basically, whatever direct intervention Abraham expressed towards the angels, the visitors, so Hashem's intervention was also direct. But anything which was indirect, Hashem did indirectly as well. What's an example of what he did indirectly? So Abraham did not get the water himself to give the guests. He said he got one of his servants to get the water. He says, "Let water be taken for the guests. Let water be brought for the guests." Because he did that indirectly, so Hashem did it indirectly by bringing it through the rock and having Moshe go to the rock to get the water, instead of it coming down directly. So it's like measure for measure. What Abraham did, God did. But it still begs the question, why, what's the message behind this? So I would like to suggest, my thought, is that this is not to imply that Abraham did something wrong. But it goes back to what we were discussing before. There are many ways with which God reveals himself in the universe. There are revealed ways, there are concealed ways. There are ways in which you see him directly, there are times you don't see him directly. But it's all God. It's all from Hashem regardless. So just as Abraham presented himself, provided for his guest directly in a revealed way, so Hashem reveals himself, takes care of us in a revealed way too. Just like Abraham took care of his guest in a concealed way sometimes, for whatever reason, for a legitimate reason, so Hashem also presents himself and provides for us in a concealed way as well. And that's what he did with the water. It's a concealed revelation. A concealed revelation. But it doesn't make a difference, because Hashem is here everywhere. In fact, in the same verse about the water, the verse says that God said to Moshe, "Behold," listen carefully, "I am standing before you over there on the rock." So he's talking to him in the camp, and he says to him, go to the rock, go to Mount Sinai to get the water. But before he says that, he says, "Behold, I am standing before you over there at the rock." Well, what's going on? Is he standing here? He's standing there. So the Orach Chaim says, yeah, he's standing everywhere. He's everywhere. He's standing over here and he's standing over there, because Hashem is everywhere. Hashem's bounty comes in revealed ways, in concealed ways. It doesn't make a difference. And when we get lost in the thinking and in the philosophizing about that, we lose our connection with him. And that's what the message is. So not to get lost in our minds, not to get lost in our thinking, but to connect the heart, to activate the emotions, and to be almost like simplistic, so to speak. To think about just simply, you know what, I'm standing on my Father's shoulders. My Father's carrying me. He's taking care of me from this day I was born. We are Kanai Nahara. We are, all of us, many years into this life. We've been given so much. We've been carried by our Father for so many decades of our lives. So let's appreciate that, just to connect to that, to feel it, to appreciate it. He's carrying me. He's carrying us. And therefore express our love to him, our subjugation to him, our submission to him, our gratitude to him, and not get lost in the philosophizing about why Hashem does things, why Hashem doesn't do things, how he does things. Ha'im yesh Hashem alakid. Is God a yesh before in our midst? Is he a felt presence in our midst? Is he an ayin in our midst? Is he more distant? What is the nature of his hanhaga? Is it a concealed hanhaga? Is it a revealed one? Okay, it's interesting, fascinating. But let's get down to brass tacks, to the service of Hashem, to the feelings of connection to him and the service of Hashem, because that, at the end of the day, is what we're going to carry with us onto the next stage of our lives after 120. So that's the a little bit of a message over here in this passage, according to how I was thinking about it. So we should all, merit to be connected in a felt way, in an emotional way, and to combine our thinking with our feelings, with our hearts and our desires, to bring Hashem's presence closer to us, and to bring Mashiach very quickly.